the best Mia Allen build in Evil Dead the game. Hey, what's up, everybody? Have another build guide here for you. Going to talk about Mia here. This is going to go really in depth. I'm going to try to make videos a little bit faster though, so we're not going for a full hour talking about this, but this is still an in-depth breakdown, so it's probably going to be a longer video, just hopefully not as long as it has been in the past. All right, first we'll break down her abilities. Number one is Uncontrollable. This is her active. When activated, Mia cannot be possessed, but fear level increases and cannot be decreased. However, when the ability deactivates, her fear level drops according to how many evil units she killed while it was active. So, to make this clear, at max fear, she gets a total of a 40% damage bonus from Fear Leads to Anger. I always forget that Fear Leads to Anger is technically a separate ability from this. So just to talk about Uncontrollable right now, it does give you a 20% melee damage boost, which is really nice. That just happens the second you activate it. Doesn't matter what your fear is at, you get a 20% damage bonus. It's a 25-second duration. The fear increase is only 3 per second, which is fairly slow. The fear reduction per kill is 8. That's also not instant. It starts to drop slowly over time as you get unpossessed, or after the ability ends, depending on how many units you killed while it was active. This could also be used defensively. This could be used as a tool to stop demon from possessing you if need be. I wouldn't recommend it though. I'd recommend primarily using this as an offensive ability. This is something you're going to save usually for when the boss comes out. That's usually what you want to use it for. It's tough because you could use it for basic units, but basic units you need to just be able to kill by yourself. Right now, Puppeteer basics are ridiculously OP. I've even had a scenario where I was max fear. I activated my ability and I was using a heavy attack with a legendary shovel, and I didn't do anything to a possessed basic, a puppeteer basic. That's insane. Absolutely insane that they are that strong right now. So just keep that in mind. Like, more than likely, if you're going up against like a puppeteer, you're going to need to just run as best you can. Hopefully find a nearby car. You shouldn't really be fighting possessed basics at all. Even if you are, well, at least a puppeteer possessed basic, I should say. If you are, even if you're in a group and you're sticking together, I wouldn't recommend fighting them. I would recommend running away. But in a scenario where you're forced to fight them, like at the book or the dark ones, you know, then maybe you can activate it. But I would still try to save this ability for bosses as much as possible. It is important to note that this ability is basically useless at the book stage of the game, which is one of the reasons why I think she's not quite as good as AOD Ash at being like a damage dealing warrior class, because she doesn't get her strongest ability, or one of her strongest abilities, when she needs it most. Like, she could activate it, get the 20% melee damage increase, but it's not going to really combo with Fear Leads to Anger because she can't really gain much fear at that stage in the game. And Fear Leads to Anger is when Mia's fear level reaches a specific threshold, her damage potential increases as her fear rises. The more scared she is, the more damage she deals. It's a 1% damage increase after she reaches a fear threshold of 20. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a total of a 40% damage increase when she is at max fear. So 40 plus her Uncontrollable makes it a 60% damage increase, which is pretty significant. So anytime that you could face a boss, have your Q active, and be at max fear, that's huge because it's a 60% damage increase. And then that also combos with Blood Rain, which makes it so a percentage of Mia's heavy attack damage is converted to prolonged bleeding damage, and it's a 10% of the damage that you deal in that single hit. So that's really, really good. You could swing, hit him, big damage, 60% damage increase. You've got a really slow swinging, high damage, heavy weapon, boom, 10% bleed on top of that. Pretty significant. It's really good for taking down bosses. And then last is her Weapon Master Machete. The Machete has a faster attack speed, deals increased health, balance bar, and dismemberment damage. In my testing, this is a 10% increase, which is an improvement from past warriors that only got a 5% increase. So that's pretty nice. Getting into the build itself, let's talk about perks. 1 point into Last Word, obviously, because you have to. 1 point into Artful Dodger, because 1 point into Artful Dodger will give you 1 extra dodge when you max out your stamina in game with Pink F. Maxing this out, once again, does not give you any extra dodges, so it's really not worth it. I understand that some people argue, well, you know, you're left over with more stamina, so you could recover faster and get an additional dodge back. Not worth it, in my opinion. I don't think it's worth it. Very, very, not very often, I should say, will that make a difference? So I wouldn't recommend putting more than 1 point into this, but 1 point is essential. 4 points into Industrial Strength for that 25% maximum health increase. This will put her up to like 1600 health, something like that. I don't have the exact math in front of me, but it does give her a significant health increase, and it is worth it to max it out. Unlike the shields here that you don't want to max out, but we'll get into the stuff that I'm not taking and why I'm not taking it in a second. Devastating Force increases melee weapon damage. The damage is 2, 5, 9, and 15%. Put max points into this. Why? Because the way that you want to build Mia, pure damage. Balance bar got nerfed. Balance bar is not, at least in solo queue, it's not a particularly viable strategy anymore. If you're in an organized group and everybody goes balance bar, then it could still be viable. But right now, it's easier to just kill the thing than try to even stun them. And right now, because of the nerfs to this, you know, it used to be that an extra point into blunt force trauma was an additional 15% balance bar damage. Now it's only 5%. So is, you know, an additional 5% balance bar worth a full perk point investment? No, not really. So I wouldn't recommend putting a bunch of points into this. So just having the 2 points into this to get to heavy hitter for the 15% damage increase to heavy attacks is all you really need. Then that way you'll still be doing decent balance bar damage just in case, while also focusing on actual damage, which is your bread and butter for this build, because Mia Allen's abilities are built and catered towards damage. So damage, 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 that's what you want. Then down here, we've got Tougher Than Hell. I should probably talk about both of these because they kind of go hand in hand. Tougher Than Hell is, I've got maxed out for 3 for a 10% damage reduction. I used to have 3 points into this. I tested it for a while. I don't like it. The only person that I would recommend, the only warrior that I would recommend having 3 points into Fighting Shape on is Ash, because Ash has his Wiseman's Brew that lets him heal himself. So if he ever gets to the point where he's sitting at like, you know, 90% health and he's not quite at above the 95% threshold, then he can pop a Wiseman's Brew real quick and get himself past that threshold. Mia can't do that. And the unfortunate part is that Cheryl is the only healer that has the ability to kind of top her off. You don't want to waste a Shemps on a warrior just to get him, just to heal him 100 HP to get him past the 95% threshold. So the majority of the game, especially with Mia specifically, because she's going to be getting possessed a lot. If you hit Q and save this for a boss, she's going to be max fear, which she hits Q. And if the only thing you kill is the boss, it's only going to reduce your fear by 8, which means more than likely when you come out of your ability, the demon can just possess you right away, because you're not going to lose your fear and go below the possession threshold because you're not killing any units. You're saving it for the boss. That's going to be most of the time the only unit on the field. So what I found is the majority of the time I was sitting below 95% health and I wasn't really getting any benefit from Fighting Shape. So I decided to take my points from that and put it into Tougher Than Hell just to give Mia a little bit more tankiness. Also works really well in case you have a David on your team, that 10% damage reduction plus David's 30% damage reduction that he gets from Soto Pop Gives you a total of 40, which is pretty nice. Stunning strikes, you're just putting 1 point into here to get over to these two, which are your last 2 damage perks. Weapon Master two-handed is what you want, because with this build, you're going to go all in on two-handed, and I'll get into why in a second when I get into which weapons you want to focus on with her. There's one leftover point here that you can kind of do with what you want. Doesn't really matter where you put it. Personally, the reason I'm putting it into Weapon Master one-handed is because RNG could suck sometimes. Sometimes you're going to get in a match and it's going to be like, oh, no good two-handed weapons drop, but one-handed machete dropped. It's like, well, I don't want to lose out on a bunch of damage because I'm spec'd entirely into two-handed. So this is like, give myself an extra 5% damage. So just in case I am stuck with a one-handed weapon, which is not ideal, it still doesn't leave me, you know, out to dry here. So that's why I like to put 1 point into this. All of these are fairly insignificant increases. So you can kind of put it wherever. It's only about a 5% increase no matter where you put it. The lone exception here would be the last word. The reason I don't put it into the last word, which is a nice segue into which perks we're not taking. The reason I don't put it into the last word is because you're going to be doing heavy attacks 99% of the time in order to take advantage of Blood Rain. That means that you're not going to be hitting the last attack in your combo very often, even if it's a boss who could survive enough hits to where you might hit the last attack in your combo. Most of the time your combo is going to get broken by something. Either the boss is going to hit you, something else is going to hit you from behind. Heavy attacks are so slow, very rarely spamming heavy attacks are you going to land a fourth and final heavy attack to complete the combo and take advantage of this extra damage. So I think it's a waste of a point to put one in there. So I just said, well, if I got to put it anywhere, I might as well put it here just to make sure that, you know, I'm not completely screwed on damage. If a really rare, high rarity one-handed weapon is all I can find. Reinforced Amulet is not bad. I just think that damage is so important. There's nowhere to really take points away from. Like, you know, where you're gonna every point you have here is spec'd into damage, so you can't take any points out of that. So the only thing you can really take points out of would be this excess point here, and then you'd have to take points out of your health in order to get this up to 3, and that's just not worth it because it's only a 3% increase to a 2% to a 5%, whereas industrial strength is a 10%, a 5%, a 5%, a 5%. So industrial strength is just more efficient, especially because industrial strength is increasing your health, which is a much higher number, which means it's a much greater increase than shields are. So that's why we're not putting points into Reinforced Amulet on Mia. Improved Amulet, again, if you haven't watched my breakdown video on shields, Improved Amulet is never worth it. Don't ever put points into this on any character. Fear No Evil, it actually works against Mia. You don't actually want to have fear reduction. You want your fear to go up really fast so that when you activate your ability, you're constantly increasing your fear, and just in general, you want to be at high fear for most of the match. So that, like, in a dream scenario, your fear would be just below the threshold for getting possessed. Boss drops, hit Q, boom. Now you're like max damage right away. So you want your fear level to be kind of high for most of the match. So you don't want fear reduction on her at all. Quicker cooldown is not bad, but it's just not enough of a decrease and not enough of a reduction to really ever justify taking this. So I don't put it on her. And her ability is really good, but if you only use it for bosses, you're going to have it up for every single boss, even at its normal cooldown. It's not like a Henry the Red skill where you may want that skill constantly as soon as it's off cooldown, or a Hunter Ash skill where you want it constantly as soon as it's off cooldown most of the time. So this is something that you're going to have it when you need it, just at base. You typically do not need quicker cooldown. Seasoned Survivor Basic, damage reduction for all 3 of these. Just not really worth it. That's not her role. Her role is not to be a tank. Her role is to deal damage. She's kind of a unique warrior in that sense. So I wouldn't recommend points into any of these damage reduction perks. Over here we have Dismemberment. Both of these Dismemberment perks, you notice they still have the same percentage increases that the balance bar perks used to have. So that might entice people into investing into this and just swapping over to Dismemberment. Obviously, the inherent disadvantage with Dismemberment is that at no point in the match does Dismemberment ever have an effect on bosses. Whereas Balance Bar typically has no effect mid to late game when the demon gets bosses maxed out and they can no longer be stunned. Dismemberment never affects bosses throughout the entire match, and that's kind of brutal. On top of that, in my testing, and I did some extensive testing with Dismemberment, I don't know if something's bugged. I don't know if Dismemberment just sucks now, but this did nothing in my testing. It did virtually nothing. It seemed like even when I was hacking off limbs of basic units, which the only time this is going to be relevant, by the way, is against possessed units, because everything else that you attack is going to die in one hit because you're doing heavies and you're spec'd purely into damage. So this only has an effect on possessed units, and it seemed like with possessed units, I was just wailing on them, even with a machete. I did a full machete, like, speed Dismemberment build. No matter what I did, units were left with, like, one arm and could still do their attacks, so... this didn't seem to have the effect that I wanted it to. It used to be that Dismemberment could, you know, completely de-limb units and get them to the point where all they could do is that little headbutt. And that seems to not really work anymore. I don't know if that's just unique to Plaguebringer's units, which is the majority of what I tested against. But it seems to not do much, and I just don't think it's worth it at the moment until this receives some kind of a buff. Sting like a bee, increased damage with light attacks. You don't want to be using lights with her very often just because of the benefit she gets from Blood Rain, the 10%. Bleed damage is really good. That's going to be relevant on possessed units and on bosses, which I guess are technically possessed units, but you get what I mean. Because of all your damage increase perks, you got 4 points of Devastating Force, 3 points of the Weapon Master two-handed. You're probably going to be one-shotting most basics with lights anyway, so you don't really need this. And then when it comes to possessed units that are going to be surviving your heavy attacks, you want to be doing heavies because you want to get Blood Rain and kill them just a little bit faster. And this does make a difference, by the way. I've had several instances where I've heavy attacked a unit and then they're winding up to swing and the bleed out kills them before they can land the next attack. So it does make a fairly significant difference. Then we have Second Wind down here, which I believe is the last thing. Never take this on anybody. It's terrible. Not much more to say. You never want to be hanging out below 50% health if you could help it. If somebody's below 50% health 99% of the time, you're going to want someone to heal you and get you back up above the threshold. So I would never really recommend putting points into this. All right. So that's the perk breakdown. Let's talk about her pink F, which is a little unique. I gotta make sure that I'm not actually jumping into a real match. It's a little unique because I actually think you don't want to take fear reduction on her at all, which is very strange. Because same reason you don't want to take Fear No Evil in the perk tree. She wants to be at high fear for the majority of the match. So I wouldn't recommend taking that on her at all. As far as what you want to upgrade first, it's kind of tough. I don't think you need melee damage right away because melee damage, possessed units are not going to be that strong right away. The one exception is Puppeteer basics. But if a Puppeteer basic attacks you, it doesn't matter if you have your melee maxed out. You need to get out of there because you're not going to be able to kill it. It is going to mess you up. I would say that for the most part, you want to max either shield or stamina first. This is going to be entirely dependent on where you spawn. If you spawn in a really good loot location and you find plenty of amulets, You know, let's say you find an amulet or two and then you find your first chest. Go ahead and upgrade shield first so you could get this max and get to level 5 and get one amulet filled with 2 shield bars so you could save your amulets for level 5 shields. Then you want 2 points into stamina so you can get that extra dodge. That's going to help mitigate damage, which is really important. Then after that, I'd start putting points into melee because it's around that time, most likely, depending on how you do loot-wise, that you're going to need that damage. That's probably around the time that the demon's going to be reaching level 10 and start getting the boss out. You're going to want that extra melee damage at about that time. Then obviously you're going to put points into health, make her a little bit tankier, which is always nice. Then a couple points into range last. This doesn't matter as much. It's really only relevant for helping stop your possessed teammates from messing you up. And then fear, you're not putting points into at all. Don't even put any points into fear reduction. You don't want it. You want to be high fear for most of the match anyway. So no points into fear. Save that last. Don't put any points into it. It's annoying as hell to play with because you're going to have a little 2 down here flashing. It's going to want to constantly remind you to spin your pink F. Don't do it. Don't put your last 2 points into fear. So there you go. All right, now let's take a look at our melee weapons. I already put them in here, so I don't have to do each one individually, so we can knock this out just a little bit faster. Up here in S tier, we have our 2 two-handed Big Daddy weapons here. You just go ahead and look at the damage. That tells you all you need to know. These are the highest damage weapons. They're slow. They swing slowly on heavies. All weapons swing slowly on heavies, so it's not going to make much of a difference. You want weapons that deal a ton of damage in one swing, so then that way you get a larger bleed percentage from blood range, or blood rain, excuse me. So that's why you want to take the axe and the sword. These are going to be your 2 highest priorities. And then down here you got the shovel, the sledge, and the nail bat. They are a little bit lower damage than the ones up here. A lot of people might find it controversial to have the sledgehammer down in A tier, but I just don't think balance bar is as relevant. You know, maybe you could justify having this up here because you think that the 10-point damage trade-off is worth the extra balance bar damage that this weapon gets. I don't think it's worth it just because I don't think that that's Mia's role. Right now, I think that you should have at least one other warrior on your team. Double warrior, I think, should be the standard right now. And their role can be maybe a little more balance bar. But even then, I still think that damage is the way to go. So these are all the 70 damage weapons that you have in A tier, just below S tier right here. Then B tier, you got the mace and the machete. Now, neither one of these are two-handed. However, the mace does do pretty decent damage, and it's got decent balance bar, similar to the sledge. So the mace is not a bad weapon to take if you can't find any of these 5. And then the machete, she does get the 10% damage bonus from it. It is a one-handed weapon, but that's why it's in B tiers, because she does have a weapon mastery in it. So the machete is something that you could definitely take. These are kind of things that I'd say B tier with these weapons are weapons where you will take these over these weapons if you find something of significant rarity. I would say at least 2 tiers of rarity above. So if you find a legendary machete and you have a blue axe, I would say go ahead and take the legendary machete. It's worth that, you know, it decrease in damage on those heavy attacks and decrease damage because you have 1 less point into weapon mastery one-handed versus weapon mastery two-handed. So it's worth it in that scenario because I think rarity, the damage increases are quite significant, whereas the increases in like dismemberment and balance bar are not very significant. The spear is a 40 damage weapon, not very good. However, it is two-handed and it is a little bit faster. It is still a 3-speed. And I really like the swing animations on this. This is strictly a weapon where it's the beginning of the match. Somehow, some way, you haven't found any of these 7 weapons yet. Then you're going to take this one. If you have your choice between all of these down here, you're going to take the spear. That's why it's in C tier. All of these are not very good. D tier, you got all these things down here. I wouldn't really recommend taking any of these. These are all kind of junk. And then I honestly should have an F tier. I should probably have another tier down here to put these three in. Obviously, the chainsaw's there because you can't use it. So, chainsaw is F tier on Mia. These two are awful because of how detrimental they are to your team. In particular on Mia, because of how crazy high damage she can be. Also because you're spec'd into damage, so she's going to be dealing a lot of damage. I tried using the syringes because, hey, it was the new weapon. Why not try it out when it first came out? And I can't tell you the number of times I just downed my team because I stun locked them with the syringes. And that's true of both the syringes and the hunting knife. If the demon possesses you, which the demon's probably going to possess you quite a few times over the course of the match because that's just the nature of the character. He wants to stay high fear. If they spam light attacks, they're going to be stun locking your teammates, and there's a good chance that they're going to kill your teammates, especially in solo queue where there's not a ton of communication, where people aren't going to be like, hey, shoot him, shoot Mia before she downs her teammate. Like, this is very detrimental to your team. Wouldn't recommend taking them. All right, and then for ranged weapons, we have here off to college top marks on low prices. I'm kidding. Up here, we have the pistol and the lever action rifle. The lever action rifle, of course, just got switched over to take pistol ammo. So now that's an S tier weapon for warriors. Both take pistol ammo. Both have really high fire rate. Somewhat larger clips with 5. And what is this? I can't even see what that is. 7, I think. So basically, the reason you're taking these is it's to stun lock your hunter. if they get possessed. That's pretty much your job with a ranged weapon, is to stun lock the hunter if they get possessed. So that's why you're taking either one of these. And also because it takes pistol ammo, it's pretty unlikely that your hunter is going to be using pistol ammo, because pistol ammo is not very good for taking down bosses. So most of the time they're probably going to be using either special weapon ammo or long gun ammo. Down below that is the revolver. The revolver, same thing, takes pistol ammo, which is really nice. Once again, the fire rate is fast enough that you can still stun lock people. The only difference is that, honestly, this probably could be an A tier, because like I said, the rate of fire is still fast enough. The rate of fire is slower than these two, but it's still fast enough to stun lock people. And the bonus is it does do more damage. So it might be a little easier to knock some hunter teammate out of a possession. So the revolver is really good for that as well. I'll go ahead and put the revolver in S tier. The nail gun I'll have in A tier, just because this thing is just as good as all these weapons at stun locking somebody and knocking them out of a possession. However, it takes special weapon ammo, which sucks because it's going to be harder to keep up on ammo. You don't want to take special weapon ammo away from your hunter potentially. So nail gun is really something that I would say, like, only take this if your hunter isn't using a special weapon, and only take this if you don't have a David on your team who doesn't want to use it. Down here, I have the blunderbuss and the hunting rifle. The reason that these two things are in B tier is primarily because they are good at taking out the flautist against a necromancer. You're going to come down here and probably take one of these two, depending on which weapon your hunter decides to use. You're going to use the opposite. These two things can be very good for that purpose. But the lever action and the revolver are both really good at that as well. So you might still take those over this. So that's why these are down here in B tier. Crossbow is going to be down in C tier for the same reason that you would want to take the blunderbuss. It's good for hunting a flautist. The reason it's a tier below, though, is because it's harder to land your shots in the event that you need to take out a possessed teammate. You're going to have a really hard time hitting a hunter at a distance with this thing. Whereas with these two weapons, it should be fairly easy to hit a hunter with. So the crossbow, probably want to avoid for the most part. But it is a nice backup in case for some reason you can't use these. Maybe you got double hunter on your team. One's using a pistol. One's using a long weapon and a legendary crossbow dropped or something. Something weird like that, and nobody wants it. Then you might take the crossbow. Down here are all the things that you absolutely don't want to use. Shotguns just don't do you a whole lot of good. They don't have enough range to be very good at taking out possessed teammates. They don't have enough range to take out flautists. You're not going to be doing enough damage to knock a possessed teammate out of a possession really quickly. And if you're at that range to where a shotgun would be relevant, you might as well just melee. So that's why these are down here. Plus, they take long weapon ammo, and there's a good chance that your hunter, whoever they are, is going to be using long weapon ammo. And then the saw gun is just awful. Doesn't do a lot of damage. Hard to hit because it's a projectile weapon. It's just trash. And then the explosive crossbow, really bad because it's a projectile weapon, and it's all the same reasons I just said for the saw gun. It doesn't do enough damage. Maybe there could be something to be said to use this on like a Scotty, because you could shoot at the ground on a portal and then heavy, and maybe the combination of the splash damage from the explosive crossbow plus the splash damage from Scotty's abilities will allow you to take out a bunch of units at once. But Mia is not Scotty, so the explosive crossbow I've got down in D tier. So, in summary, Mia is a character that you want to play for damage. I hope this video helped you. As always, let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know about your builds and anything you've had success with. But thank you for watching as always. I will see you in the next video, which should be a video about David and how to play him. But thank you all for watching. Please subscribe, like the video, all that good stuff, and I will see you guys next time.